In a courtroom divided by science and truth, experts clash over a single child's fate. Each word carries weight, every opinion, a spark in the fire of justice. This isn't just testimony, it's a battle between knowledge and conscience.
And comment on the testimony of the expert, the defense experts, is not really true rebuttal proof. I would ask the court to hear this testimony out of the presence of the jury so we can determine if it's truly rebuttal proof or if it's just she doesn't like their opinion and they want another crack at educating the jury about their theory.
Mr. Holder?
I can clarify my question.
Well, the whole purpose of allowing, under the rule, an expert witness to remain in the courtroom and to observe the testimony of another expert is to allow them to address the testimony of that expert and to differentiate what their opinion is from that of the expert. While Mr. Stryan.
In the courtroom, truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides behind the silence of experts.
Different, but my understanding is that she's been called to differentiate her testimony from that of the other, or to show the reasons why she disagrees, the same way that the defense expert was allowed to sit in on her testimony and then to testify, especially the last witness we had, who testified at length about why she was wrong in her opinion. So I think that she's entitled to, but we'll allow her to testify outside ask her questions outside the presence of the jury, and we'll go from there.
Maybe a little more specific then, Dr. Lake, and I apologize for that. So you heard Dr. Pena's testimony specifically about, I guess, concussions and diagnosing concussions.
There's one child and a question that cuts deep. Was it science or was it denial?
When Dr. Pena was describing concussions in young children, he made it a point to say how difficult it was to diagnose concussions in young children because symptoms, just as we were actually in agreement when I testified. I also said it is very difficult to diagnose symptoms of concussions in young children. But yet he insisted that Olivia did not have a concussion because she didn't show any symptoms of concussion. So he's basically saying the same thing. He's saying she doesn't have a concussion because she shows no symptoms of concussions, but children can't it's difficult to diagnose concussions in very young children because they don't show symptoms of concussion. And when
experts disagree, justice trembles because every word can change a life.
Symptom of a concussion, because on the last head strike, she becomes motionless. And that is not the way children fall asleep.
Thank you. And I also want to ask you about, Dr. Pena testified that he agreed that the bruising showed signs of maltreatment, but that he called it a wormian bone, did not show signs of maltreatment. Did you disagree with the way he was separating the two incidents? Did you disagree with that?
Yes. So when we are, as child abuse physicians, and we're both child abuse physicians, when we are evaluating children for maltreatment, you look at the entirety of the presentation. So what I mean by that is exactly what he did as an expert, which is he looked at the history, he looked at the physical exam findings. He didn't have the benefit of examining the child in person at the time, nor did I. You look at the radiology.
The courtroom turns cold as medical minds collide, each fighting for what they believe is true.
Be talking about Olivia having a diagnosis of craniosynostosis, which she does not.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to move to Dr. Matches's testimony now. There was several points I wanted to address with you regarding his testimony. He used the term bregma a lot. What was he referencing what is a bregma? What was he referencing with that?
So bregma basically designates where the bones come together, the frontal bone, the two parietal bones. It's what we call the anterior fontanelle in an infant when it hasn't completely closed together. So it is basically where they all come together. but it sounds fancy.
And then on one of his images that he used in his procedure, the virtual autopsy procedure, the one where
She says the signs were clear. The child was hurt. He says the science says otherwise.
of energy into it to enhance it. And it created this faint line that was much fainter than the darker line. Did you have an opinion as to what that faint line is?
I do. And I actually mentioned it before because obviously bones are not completely smooth. And we're talking about basically almost computer animation with what we're doing with, our studies now, all this digitized things. And just like with anything else with animation, you can get what we call background noise. So the idea is that you're taking multiple, just thousands of pictures in different directions, all sorts.
Every diagram, every scan, every word could decide the fate of innocence or guilt.
In the same plane may create some noise in the background. But things that are real, and definite, like a fracture, a broken bone, that's the way we read them. That's where the defect is.
Is that why it appeared so dark on the scan?
Correct. And that's why you do have a radiologist read. 3D reconstruction is a form of a virtual autopsy. It's actually the images that they use for 3D reconstruction, which we do for live patients. It's the same. It's those images are used and interpolated into their so-called virtual autopsy. He mentioned that that's like an actual like proprietary thing now. And a hospital doesn't use that on live patients.
The defense claims confusion. The state claims clarity. But who really saw what happened?
But anyway, so the 3D images basically do the same thing, and our radiologist looked at it, saw the defect, and said he didn't have the benefit of seeing the video or given the history. It just said child with head trauma, suspected child abuse. That's all the information he has. And so the radiologist, part of their support, because it's a clinical diagnosis, he was looking for soft tissue swelling to confirm. But there wasn't any soft tissue swelling, and the reason why there wasn't any soft tissue swelling is because it was weeks afterwards, or 10 days afterwards. And so the radiologist not having the benefit of that information, that term is going to be
A faint line on a screen. A shadow to some, a fracture to others.
3D reconstruction. You can see it on Dr. Match's virtual autopsy. There was a difference in the parallel line to the sagittal suture and what he claims is the third side, making it what he calls triangular. But the other distinction I have with that whole presentation, they keep calling it a Wormian bone, and a Wormian bone is in the suture, and actually what they're alleging is this is an anterior fontanelle Wormian bone, which is extremely rare, and it's in the fontanelle. And what they're trying to say is that this supposed triangular piece of bone, it's not in the fontanelle. It's beside the sagittal suture, so that it's not a Wormian bone, and it's not an anterior Wormian bone.
That's what I didn't want to get into another overcomplex discussion.
When evidence becomes opinion, truth becomes a battlefield.
You just covered, you said it was not intrasutural, and is that what you just explained?
Yes.
And were you surprised that Dr. Matches didn't have any examples to show us of Wormian bones that looked like Olivia's?
Correct. And that's why I showed a picture of what an anterior Wormian bone looks like. They're fragments. They're not like, they're even described in the literature as usually being kind of round.
Were you able to find any examples at all of a Wormian bone that looked what we see in Olivia's scan?
No.
That'd be my questions.
Ryan, do you wish to cross-examine on those issues? I'm sorry? All right. I'll hear you.
The child's silence screams louder than any expert's voice.
Your Honor, respectfully, this is not rebuttal evidence. Taking each of the doctors that she's challenging one at a time, Dr. Pena, she agrees with Pena that it's difficult to diagnose concussions in children. Dr. Pena spoke yesterday about the children being nonverbal, can't ask them questions that could help diagnose a concussion. So my view of it is they put her on in direct. We put and she was subject to cross-examination. We called our experts in direct. They were subject to cross-examination by the state. The state already gets 2 arguments. This is sort of like a third argument to the jury, giving her the...
One expert calls it a mistake. Another calls it a sign. The jury must decide which truth to believe.
That they want to get into the record, her commentary on the findings of our experts. She was asked on direct examination about the wormian bone. She's already given the jury her fulsome opinion about it was not a wormian bone. So I don't know why it would be rebuttal to call her back at this point and have her comment on that. With Dr. Hinkes, that is a completely ancillary issue about the fontanelle, whether it was closing or not closing. That is not an issue for the jury to determine in this case. To have her gratuitously comment on that under the guise of rebuttal proof, I don't believe is appropriate. She, for some reason, doesn't really like the word bregma, but it has nothing to do with the jury's consideration of the expert proof in this case. It's, in terms of why it's not a wormian bone and why there is no...
In this fight between medicine and morality, justice must find its heartbeat.